A year ago, he was projected as the number one overall pick in this year's NHL entry draft. Could James Hagens be heading to the Utah Mammoth at number 4? We're going to talk about it on today's Locked On Mammoth.
You are Locked On Mammoth, your daily podcast on the Utah Mammoth, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everyone, and once again, it's time for Locked On Mammoth. I'm veteran NHL voice Tom Callahan, joined by longtime team analyst Robin Leaño, and every single day, we bring you Locked On Mammoth right up through the draft, right up through free agency. Robin and I are riding the rails right here with you, talking Mammoth hockey. And Robin, it's an exciting month. We're into June now, by the way, which is absolutely incredible. But we're going to be really picking up the draft talk now here, Robin. And today's focus is on James Hagens. This time last year, Robin, if you asked, I dare say most draft watchers, they were projecting him to be number one overall this season, but he slipped. And we're going to talk about why. There are many reasons, not all of his doing, but Robin sitting at number 4, there's the potential that the Utah Hockey Club could select James Hagens at that spot.
It's a really interesting conversation. A lot of you guys have talked about it and said, yeah, that's, should definitely look at a player like James Hagens. And when you're at number 4, I feel like, and we've talked about this, right? We talked about this with Tony Ferrari as well as with Will Skelch, and looking at what James Hagens can bring to the table. And there's a lot of upside, right? I mean, the only thing, and we're going to get into it on a lot of the other aspects here, Tom, the only thing is doesn't fit Utah's MO, or Bill Armstrong's MO, as I should say, because James Hagens is, under 6 feet. So he is undersized for most, for a lot of those. But, I wouldn't mind bringing in another Clayton Keller.
Well, and Robin, I'm so glad you went there, because I wanted to go there with you and ask you that question specifically. How important is 5'11", 176? Now, that's probably not what he'd make the NHL at. He might be 5'11", 190, 195, maybe even 200 pounds, depending on how the rest of his development goes. At 18 years old, it's hard to say. But 5'11" is probably going to be 5'11". Doesn't fit the 6'5", 6'6" Russian machine that is making its way over here this year with, Daniil Boot and Simashev. But how important is that in today's NHL? Is it enough to make it a deal breaker for Utah?
As we've talked about this and said that, okay, Bill Armstrong's MO, that's what he's known for. He's getting those bigger physical guys. But at the same time, what I noticed Bill Armstrong does do is he'll still bring in some balance, right? When it comes to whoever, especially a best man available, right? That's what you'll be able to see. I mean, Logan Cooley, when he was drafted by the then Arizona Coyotes, he stands at 5'10", even shorter, right? But there was a huge upside of bringing him in because he was far and away, without a single doubt, the best player available. And when you're drafting at 4, and you have someone of the talent James Hagens has, and really shows, and we're probably going to see even more of it. He's going to play another year, I believe, was it Boston University, right? He's going to play another year at Boston. It's like, he's only going to get better. His skill level is only going to get better.
It's funny, Robin. And for those of you who kind of wonder how we set up the show, Robin and I discuss topics, but not what we're going to say about the topics beforehand. But it's a little frightening today, Robin. You're picking up all of my points before I ask my questions, because I wanted to bring up that Hagens talked about watching Logan Cooley, patterning his game to a certain extent after Cooley loves the dynamism of a player like Cooley and has been watching a lot of Mammoth games. And that's one of the guys he cited, saying, hey, I love what Logan Cooley's been able to do, and drafted at number 3 overall, maybe Hagens at number 4 overall to the Mammoth. Do you see similarities there?
I do, and I think that's kind of why I think there is a lot of that kind of excitement around it. I mean, it's funny because I at first said, "Hey, wouldn't mind drafting another Clayton Keller," but I mean, really at the end of the day, it's like, "Hey, we wouldn't mind drafting another Logan Cooley," because as you said, that's who he's modeling his game after. But isn't it kind of neat for a Utah fan, on a Utah fan perspective, to say, "Hey, there is a prospect a draft prospect out here in 2025 who's modeling their game after a 2022 NHL draftee." Like, that just shows how good of a player Logan Cooley is and how much of an inspiration he is to a lot of these younger prospects that are coming into the league.
Young up and comer. They both chose similar paths, went through the USN TDP, and now this was a freshman year for Hagens in Boston, and point a game as a freshman in NCAA, especially in Hockey East, is pretty good. 37 points in 37 games. I don't think that's anything to scoff at. But you know what, Robin, I will say this, and this is as we begin to talk about reasons why James Hagens is not a consensus number one anymore. Sometimes, and I'm not going to say it's everybody, but there are some scouts who put more weight into playing an 80-ish game junior season than they do into a 37-game college season. I think it is apples and basketballs to try to compare the two because it's just so different. And the purpose is different. I mean, it's a scholastic team when you're playing in college, but junior hockey is meant to basically simulate an NHL schedule, albeit with bus travel. But I think there's some bias there sometimes coming from scouts who much prefer guys who played junior as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, I mean, there is still an extra premium on players who play out of the particularly the the CHL. I mean, there are a couple other ones out of Europe. USHL still gets a decent amount of love, but not a whole lot. I mean, USHL primarily if the and this is the the if flag on the USHL is when the U.S. National Development Program, Player Development Program is involved on that. They kind of make their team on that they make a USHL team so they can get a full season. But then when you go to college, things kind of change. Things kind of, and there's and it's a very more unique, different way. But if you're still a team that can make it to, let's say, your conference tournament or your or the Frozen Four, there's still I think there's still a lot that goes into that.
There is, and there's other reasons why things I think are shifting around James Hagens. We're going to get into those. We're also going to talk a little bit about, should Utah make that pick and why, what our reasons are, why and why not. And also, we're going to talk a little bit later on in the program about Fanatics taking over Utah. And so, might not be as bad as you think. But Robin and I will continue on here. And hey, if you like what you're hearing right now, don't be afraid to subscribe to the show. It doesn't cost you anything. And you get to hear some great hockey talk in the meantime as well. All right, we'll be right back talking James Hagens here on Locked On Mammoth. And today's show is brought to you in part by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, which gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I'm an O'Shells person. We talk about this. I love the grab and go, the little packs. Now, they do sell the big bags. Somebody was kind of asking about that the other day because you always know I have the little packs. I have them in my bag. I have them stashed everywhere. They're all over the place in the vehicle, in the office, in the desk. That's how I roll. But if you are a at-home snacker, if you like to, pop open a bag while you're watching a movie, catching up on your streaming service, you could do that too. And if you do love cracking open every shell because, that's your thing, why not? There are in-shell options, and they are, of course, a classic favorite. So you know what? I love it because the protein keeps you going. I'm very big on protein snacks. I think it's great. Makes you feel pretty good. Doesn't weigh you down, which is huge. Doesn't make you feel tired, like you want to take a nap. And it's just easy. It really is. Grab and go. You got the pouch with you. There's different flavors. You can buy different flavor variety packs. I love them. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here on Locked On Mammoth, Tom Callahan, Robin Leano, Utah Mammoth at number 4. We're shining the spotlight on James Higgins, a possible pick. Robin, we talked about the size differential is a little smaller maybe than what Bill Armstrong might go for. The other thing is, it's interesting. So Craig Button, who does a lot of stuff for the NHL Network, does a lot of scouting stuff. And I really like Craig. I like what he has to say. Actually made an appearance over on Philadelphia's NBC affiliate and was talking about James Hagens. And it's interesting, by the way, they have him listed at 5'10". We have him listed at 5'11". But he was still one of the best freshmen in the game. Now, he does have a gold medal with Team USA at the 2025 IIHF World Junior Championship. He had 9 points in a +9 in 7 games. But here's what Button had to say. He said, and this is a quote now, he's a good player. And he says, I see somebody that's going to be a good second-line center. Teams need good second-line centers. That doesn't mean he won't play number 1 center, but trying to project where he best slots, I see him as a second-line center. So that is what Button has to say. The player comparison he made was actually Matt Duchene. So, Robin, your thoughts on that? If James Higgins is a solid second-line center, is that good enough for a pick at number 4?
Number 4? Oh, yeah. I think especially where Utah is at, right? I think that's how we have to consider. You have to consider where each of these teams are at. And some of the teams in the top, they might lead, let's say, like a first pair defenseman, or they might need a true number 1C or a potential future true number 1C. And yeah, cool, that they're all there, but Utah doesn't really need that because they are going to get a number 1C at some point, like one of their, at least a true number 1C, I should say. And a lot of the other players are on there are already kind of getting towards that top line, close to franchise level. What Utah can do is they can get the rest, and so it makes it. There's an understandable reason why some of these players, like Misha, like Schaefer, those players, I think, trying to think who is, I think Frondell, I think is above, like is above on most draft boards. But there's a reason why they're all, they're all above, and I think it makes sense. But if you're Utah, I think James Higgins makes so much sense.
So a couple of the other places that folks have him ranked, Dauber Prospects has him 3rd. NHL Central Scouting has him 3rd among North American skaters, which it's differentiated by NHL Central Scouting, the Europe and North America, and then they split skaters and goalies. Another one I thought was interesting. So Craig Button actually has him lowest, ranked number 8th on his depth chart, but Bob McKenzie has him at number 2. So I thought that was very interesting as well, to see kind of the low and the high among 2 very respected hockey draft watchers there. So that's interesting that McKenzie has him all the way up at number 2.
That's an interesting one.
It is, because as we just talked about, Robin, I don't know that there's a world where the top 2 is altered in this draft from what we think it's going to be now. I just don't necessarily see it.
No,
the question might be what happens at 3.
Yeah, it's I think that's the big question, what happens at 3. Because in my mind, and again, it could be flipped. Who knows? But it's Schaefer goes to the Isles and Misa goes to the Sharks, and then 3. And again, it's toss up. It really depends on the draft board and what the GM has on their big board, because that's, as we've discussed again with our previous draft experts, is that really the top 5, top 6 even are a pretty they have their tier. They have a much bigger, a high level tier. So it really could be mixed between 1 through 6. And again, we could see some surprises.
What's interesting to me, Robin, one of the and this is one of the knocks against Hagens is he's a pass first guy. And now we talk about this with the current crop of Utah Mammoth. We would like to see them not pass off some golden shot opportunities. Now, whether or not that would translate over and it's something you could change, does that concern you?
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I'm not sure if it's like if it's just the way I see this Utah team, but I think maybe a pass first kind of player might be what Utah could use.
Oh, okay.
Because I've talked about how good of a player Logan Cooley is and how great of a shot he has. I've talked about how Dylan Guenther is a true goal scorer, but sometimes they might not have the confidence. They might defer and kind of just pass it to, let's say, your Clayton Keller or your Nick Schmaltz or any one of the veteran players, right? Because they like, oh, you've been here before, you know where to be. I'm going to pass it to you. Getting a pass first player, someone who can set up your Guenthers and Cooleys, those are your, they are, in a few years going to be your elite goal scorers. You want somebody who can be able to set them up.
Interesting train of thought. I like it. All right. So we're going to put it out there to everybody who's watching, who's listening. What do you think? You can certainly always reach out to us on social media. You can drop your thoughts in the comments. James Hagens at number 4. Robin, I don't know that Hagens is gone at number 4. So I feel like definitely a player, although we don't know, right? We have no idea.
Yeah, no, and again, this is in my vision of how it goes. It's gonna go Schaefer, Misa, Frondell, and then and we've discussed it previously, right? Of potential players that Utah can draft, and Hagens was definitely up there with the draft experts we've talked about. We've talked about Martone, and we're gonna probably maybe do a little more in depth on him later on this month. We talked pretty briefly about Desnoyers. So there are still other routes Bill Longstrong can go down.
Absolutely. Robin, we have so many more draft prospects to talk about. We've talked about a few of them briefly here, but James Hagens, possibly at number 4 for the Utah Mammoth. We're going to keep talking about prospects right up until we hit the NHL entry draft. We've got the Stanley Cup Finals starting. By the time you see this episode, it's going to start on Wednesday, plus Fanatics taking over Utah. And Robin, I've got this on breaking news. I think folks may know about the Stanley Cup. I can tell you now officially who the Utah Mammoth representative is going to be. And I will show you right after this. All right, Tom Callahan, Robin Leaño here. A lot of bated breath, so I want to get through to some news items real quick. But Robin, first and foremost, coming up here, we have the Stanley Cup Final. We have Fanatics taking over Utah. I want to talk about Fanatics because they took over from Adidas, and so not Fanatics, not weirdos, but actual Fanatics. The folks who do the merch are taking over the store. They're taking over the Jazz and the Mammoth. So the official jersey supplier for the NHL is now taking over for the Utah Mammoth. So I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to go, but I imagine it means a lot of the shop.nhl merchandise you find that you may want to see down at the store, you're now going to.
Yeah, you probably be able to do that. I know a lot of people have their opinions on Fanatics quality. That's not what this. That's not what I'm here to discuss about. But I mean, it's. I mean, to be able to have, I think, a more streamlined level of merchandise, so you can kind of find kind of the same stuff online and the same stuff in store. It is nice.
So it's, and you know what? I will say this. Okay. I'm going to go for a moment and defend Fanatics. They've done a nice job with the jerseys. I was concerned. I'm not going to lie, because Robin, yes, there have been varying reports. But I think they've done a good job with the jerseys. As a matter of fact, some of the players who were even concerned, it was funny. They took a little bit of a poll with them to ask him after they'd had him for a little while what they thought. And a couple of the players didn't even realize they'd switched to Fanatics. That's a good sign.
That is.
That's a real good sign. So maybe Fanatics is also up in their game too. So, but we're going to get a firsthand look at the Delta Center. We will know very soon.
I will say this though, Tom, what I do miss and from the Adidas era was the what do we call it? The reverse retros.
Oh yeah.
The reverse retro era was legendary. Each team had their own little special third reverse retro jersey where it's like where it either pays homage to a team that had previously been there, if it was a newer team that doesn't have much history, or if it's a team that has incredible amount of history, it has their colors, their logos, but like reversed, where it's like their tertiary colors, now their primary color. It's like really, really cool. I'm like, I want more of that.
Yes, I agree with you. I loved seeing what they were coming out with for reverse retro. And also points to you. Kudos, Robin, for use of tertiary. Just dropped it right in there. Very nicely done. Okay, the Stanley Cup is Edmonton and Florida, but the Stanley Pup is what NHL Network has done the last couple of seasons here now. And Robin, may I present to you the first ever Utah Mammoth representative? This is Logan Drewley.
Logan Drewley. I love it.
So, Robin, I have some stats on Logan Drewley. And I think this is great. Logan looks great. Logan is a Husky Shepherd mix, 14 weeks old, 13.75 pounds, rescued by the Brandywine Valley SPCA, and has been assigned to the Utah Mammoth and is a forward. Fun fact, donates slobber on the weekends. So Logan Drewley is the Mammoth representative in the Stanley Pup. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, I love it.
So
I love
Archie, we have Archie, and now we got Logan Drewley. So that's absolutely fantastic. Love to see it. All right, Robin, let's talk Stanley Cup final here. Last year, I'll drop some nuggets in here. Last year, Edmonton went head-to-head with Florida, lost in 7 games. Now, 12 times in Stanley Cup final history have teams rematched back-to-back. Now, the history actually kind of favors Edmonton in this one because it's been since the 77-78 season where the Canadiens beat Boston twice in a row that it has actually been the defending team that's won. The last 2 times, Pittsburgh and Detroit flip-flopped, and then I'm trying to think of what the other one was off the top of my head. I'm blanking on it. But so that might favor Edmonton coming into this, but they pushed them to 7 last year. This year, there's a couple of differences between the two teams. Obviously, Brad Marchand on Florida. We were not talking about Bouchard for the Oilers the way we are this year when it came to last year. So there's some subtle differences. A couple things have changed. But Robin, what do you expect?
I mean, I'm looking forward for a good, just a good matchup overall, right? I mean, there's a reason why these two teams are meeting up against each other again. I mean, some of the teams are slightly tweaked, but I feel like it's bound to be destiny. I had someone like message me and like I don't like that it's these two again, just because a lot of different reasons. For one, because where they're from, some people just didn't like it being another Florida team, and then in Alberta, like Florida and Alberta, there's like like can we get like better teams from better areas? And like I'm like, look, that's not on me. I can't change that.
Miami's a good market. It's a big market.
It
Just
is.
because it's in Florida. Edmonton. I mean, they've got. Oh, by the way, the other time it happened was Edmonton and the Islanders in the 83-84. They flip flop. So the last of the 4 cups for the Islanders, they beat the Oilers, and then the next year the Oilers beat the Islanders in the final. So the last 2 times it's happened, Robin, it does favor perhaps Edmonton coming away with a win here. Look, I understand all the chatter about the markets, but when you look at the players, the star power, and quite frankly, Robin, the entertainment factor, right? Florida got even more entertaining when they got Marchand. Not that they weren't fun to watch in the first place. And then you've got the McDavid Draisaitl circus in Edmonton with that, supporting cast of characters. This could be another wild Stanley Cup final. I'll be shocked if it doesn't go 7.
You remind me. I feel like if Edmonton loses again, I feel like the amount of frustration that's going to be directed towards, really towards anyone not named McDavid or Draisaitl. They're gonna want like a complete purge. They're like, nope, just start nuke it all.
I don't see how you could come back with the same goaltenders next year for Edmonton, or even half of your defense. Clearly, you'll keep Bouchard, and maybe you'll keep him. I don't know at this rate. Who knows? We'll see. But man, it is Stanley Cup or bust for Edmonton, isn't it? It really is.
This really is like it's like all in or nothing at this point. Like it has to be. And let's also be real. Just about all of Canada is cheering for Edmonton again, because Canada still has not won a Stanley Cup since
93.
There you go. Yeah, 93.
Montreal. So Robin, if you're a Leafs fan, who are you rooting for? Florida just knocked you out.
If you're a Leafs fan, I'm sure you're rooting for Edmonton just because it's Canada.
Okay. I was wondering if you're going to take the angle of, well, if the team that beats me goes on to win it all, at least I got beat by the best type of thing. But I mean, Toronto is.
Look, I know that train of thought, and I will tell you this: I used to be someone who thought that way. Then I went petty, and I'm like, no, I don't care. I want you out. Nice. You kicked my team out. I want you guys to feel the same pain. So go ahead and.
I love that.
Look, I've been a fan of it. Like I grew up the fan of a team who made it into the Stanley Cup almost every single year throughout my entire childhood, and never actually got a chance to lift Lord Stanley. So I got petty. I got real petty real fast.
I understand. All right, Robin. So I'm going to ask everybody to put their thoughts, what their call for the cup is, down in the comments. Who wins? How many games? Robin, I'm going to lead off with my pick. I'm going to go ahead and say once again, it is Florida in 7 this year.
Okay.
I'm going to buck the convention.
I'll take it. I'm gonna go on that flip side. I'll take the latter side. Edmonton takes the win in 7. Even to take it a little bit further for the excitement factor and a little prop bet. Going to be one with a overtime goal.
Oh, Stanley Cup Game 7 overtime.
Stanley Cup Game 7
Wow.
overtime. It's the best. Absolute best.
Wow. That's wow. If that happens, I mean, that'll be riveting. Absolutely riveting.
And of course, whoever scores that goal, like they will eat for free in Edmonton for the rest of their lives.
Oh yeah. So I got to tell you this quick story. Terry Crisp, who won the Stanley Cup twice as a player, but also won it once as a coach with the Calgary Flames in 1989. He coached the Flames to the title. The joke was, when we would go on our Western road trips, because Terry did color for TV and all the broadcasters would go out together. In Calgary, you went wherever Terry went because you might get a free meal. In Edmonton, you walked across the street from Terry because if the guy was a bad shot, he might hit you. So that was what we're. So the overtime hero in Edmonton will eat and drink for free for the rest of their life. You want to walk with that person in Edmonton, but across the street from them in Calgary and probably Toronto as well. Who knows? I don't know. The Leafs have a lot of figuring to do. I am most looking forward to this final. And Robin, I can't believe we're in June. I can't believe we're knocking on the doorstep of the draft, on the doorstep of free agency here, and the NHL awards. I haven't really talked about that much too. There's just so much going on.
There's so much going on, and it's crazy, right? I mean, the team hasn't played a game in a solid 6, 7, 8, 7.5 weeks or something. Maybe even a little bit longer, like 8 weeks or something like that. But hey, here we are.
Yeah, we still have plenty more to talk about. So, all right. Well, everybody, we appreciate you being a part of the show. Robin, if they want to reach out to us on social media, where can they find us?
Yeah, they can find us on pretty much everywhere on social media. Mostly active on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at Locked On Mammoth. You can find me personally also there at Robin with a Y _LEANO.
And I'm on Blue Sky 99% of the time at Tom Talks, but you can reach out to me on Twitter at Callahan on air. And we look forward to hearing your opinions, your thoughts. What do you think? James Hagens at number 4, Fanatics taking over. What are your thoughts and experiences with them? What do you think of Logan Drewley? And of course, what's your take for the Stanley Cup final? Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll talk to you next time on Locked On Mammoth.